They came from the stars wrapped in arrogance and steel. The Galactic Legion's assault on Earth was not a war. It was a ceremony, a flex of dominance for an empire that had never lost a campaign. Their ships, black monoliths of humming plasma and alloy, descended over major cities in synchronized, theatrical formation. Screens across the globe were hijacked by broadcasts of alien generals sneering in translated tongues, mocking Earth's refusal to surrender. Your rifles are relics. Your courage is misplaced. Resistance will only prolong your humiliation. And still, humanity resisted. On the outskirts of a ruined Colorado town, a dust-covered transport rolled to a stop beneath the twisted shadow of a fallen comms tower. The door hissed open, revealing a tall, grizzled man in his 50s. He moved with slow precision, boots crunching gravel like someone measuring every step with quiet purpose. Sergeant Elias Kane had returned, not because he wanted to, but because someone had to. He said nothing to the rebel welcoming party, young fighters with scavenged weapons and nervous eyes. They recognized him instantly, though few had seen him in person. Kane's reputation as a sniper was folklore. Long-range kills from impossible distances, patience measured in hours, sometimes days, breath held at the edge of silence. He had disappeared years ago after the last human war, vanishing into the wilderness with his rifle and ghosts. But the aliens changed everything. Inside the resistance outpost, an abandoned factory repurposed with cables, ration crates, and flickering maps, Kane studied satellite images. Alien formations dotted the globe like a spreading infection. Giant bipedal walkers guarded power cores the size of malls. Drones the shape of manta rays patrolled skies, scanning heat signatures and disrupting electronic signals. It wasn't just a technological gap, it was a chasm. "They think we're primitive," said Amina, the resistance leader, a wiry woman with a prosthetic arm and sharp eyes. "They laugh at our weapons, at our tactics. Said snipers are romanticized fools with sticks." Kane's gaze didn't lift. He kept scrolling through thermal maps. "Fools don't stack up kills." She hesitated, then nodded. "We need a ghost, Kane. One shot, one broadcast. Shake their certainty." He grunted. That was his language. He wasn't here for speeches, for glory or revenge. He was here to put something down, quietly, surgically. In the Galactic Command vessel hovering above Earth's stratosphere, Admiral Vorex chuckled as reports of resistance pockets continued to pour in. "They cling to myths," he sneered, addressing his officers. "Snipers? Ambushes? Sentiment. You do not stop a storm with a slingshot." His second-in-command, Ralthar, nodded. "Permission to deploy the orbital purge modules?" "Not yet," Vorex said, lounging in his gravity-cushioned chair. "Let them fight. Let them hope. Crushing hope is more effective when it has first been inflated." Meanwhile, Kane scouted the perimeter of the city once known as Denver. The skyline was shattered, glass teeth reaching into smoke-choked skies. Through a cracked scope, he watched two alien sentries, towering humanoids in powered armor, herd a group of human civilians toward a checkpoint. One of the guards raised his pulse rifle lazily and fired into the crowd. Just to make a point. Kane's finger twitched near the trigger, but didn't press. Not yet. He moved on, ghosting across rooftops, alleys, and debris fields, blending with shadows like a spirit summoned by war. His gear was outdated by interstellar standards, bolt-action rifle, modified suppressor, and analog scope, but every part was calibrated by hand. No AI assistance, no digital interface. Just intuition, wind, gravity, and decades of experience. The resistance fed him data. Alien lieutenants began appearing at rallies meant to humiliate captured fighters. Each broadcast opened with laughter and ended in warnings. "This planet is under cleansing. Your culture will be remembered as ash." That's when Kane chose his moment. At dawn, one such rally unfolded in the ruins of Union Station. A crowd of frightened humans was forced to kneel as a high-ranking alien officer gave a performance for the broadcast. He mocked Earth's military history, holding up a rusted sniper rifle taken from a fallen soldier. The crowd stayed silent, beaten down by fear and fatigue. The officer lifted the weapon skyward. Then his head exploded. There was no sound before it. No warning. Just a wet burst of matter, a second of disbelief, and then chaos. Screams erupted. Alien guards scrambled. The broadcast cut to static. Kane was already gone. The Legion's response was immediate and panicked. Hundreds of drones were launched. Heat sensors combed the area, artillery pounded the hills, and troops swept the buildings. Nothing. No trace. 2 days later, another officer was found dead, this time inside a secure compound. Shot through a reinforced window from a distance of nearly 2 kilometers. A single bullet. Now fear began to replace mockery. Vorax growled in frustration. Find him. End this charade. I want his name broadcast beside his corpse. Back at the outpost, Kane cleaned his rifle with meticulous care. Amina handed him a report. Alien officers refusing public appearances, morale dropping, command structures fracturing. They call you the Shadow Eye, she said. Kane said nothing. He pulled a bullet from his pouch and etched something into its casing with a small knife. What does it say? She asked. He looked up for the first time in hours. They'll read it when it's in their commander's skull. She smiled. A grim, rare thing. Across the stars, an empire had begun its campaign with laughter. Now it was listening for footsteps it could no longer see. It began with a single shot, but its echo fractured an empire's confidence. The kill was surgical, no wasted motion, no miscalculation. Lieutenant KRYTH of the 7th Outer Conquest Division, known among the Galactic ranks for his brutality and pride, had stood atop a platform mid-speech, deriding Earth's prehistoric war practices. Seconds later, half his skull was missing, and the rest of his body toppled like a hollow statue. The crowd below screamed. The broadcast blacked out. And somewhere, far beyond reach, Elias Kane exhaled. He never stayed in one place longer than necessary. After the shot, he melted into the trees flanking the city outskirts. His ghillie suit matched the terrain, its layers stitched from scavenged fabric and wire mesh. His pack was light: ammunition, water, a combat knife, a decades-old radio sealed in a plastic casing. But the heaviest thing he carried was time. Kane didn't race against it. He used it like a weapon. The resistance buzzed with newfound energy. A kill like that wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Proof that Earth was not entirely conquered, that somewhere out there a lone operator could disrupt an empire with one pull of a trigger. Graffiti started appearing on wrecked walls. The Crosshair sees you. Alien patrols doubled, tripled. Drones cluttered the skies in erratic orbits. Satellites tried to triangulate trajectories, but Kane never fired from the same place twice. Each bullet came from nowhere and returned to silence. At night, Kane slept in abandoned basements or the bellies of gutted transport trucks, places stinking of oil and old fires. Sleep was shallow. His mind cycled through firing angles, wind speed conversions, memory-mapped terrain. His world had narrowed to scopes, lines, breaths, and waiting. He didn't speak often, but the resistance operators who delivered intel began to sense something beneath his silence. Not hatred, not vengeance, but purpose sharpened into something colder. Each alien officer was a node in the invaders' hierarchy. Remove enough, and the command tree began to wobble. Meanwhile, in orbit, panic began creeping behind steel-plated protocol. The aliens had expected feral skirmishes and bomb-laden martyrdoms, not surgical, psychological warfare. The loss of 3 mid-level officers in less than 5 days made it clear. This was no rogue survivor with a lucky shot. This was a campaign. Admiral Vorax snarled beneath his breath and summoned a name from deep within the military archives. General Ralther, commander of psychological warfare during the last Kurtian rebellion. Retired. Decorated. Infamous. He was reactivated and briefed as his transport descended toward the blue-green planet now resisting occupation. I do not chase ghosts, Ralther said flatly. I exorcise them. Upon landing, he converted a once-human university into a forward operations base. Immediately, He deployed reconnaissance drones equipped with scent tracers and subsonic detectors. Decoy heat signatures were dropped into sniper-favorable zones. In one such setup, an innocent family was forced into a clearing rigged with movement sensors, used as bait. Kane, watching from nearly a mile out, steadied his scope on the commanding alien's visor. He didn't fire. He lowered the rifle, jaw tightening. Not like this. Later that night, that same commanding officer was found dead. Not from a bullet, but from a knife buried in his chest, throat slit silently. No broadcast. No witness. Just the implication. He was close enough not to shoot. The message rippled across command channels like lightning through water. Ralther, far from panicked, grew intrigued. "He thinks like us," he muttered, poring over strike maps and casualty locations. No pattern. Only effectiveness. Amina, back at the resistance camp, noticed the change in Kane's demeanor. He was still precise, still calm, but there was a tension now that hadn't been there before, a subtle weight behind his eyes. She watched him clean his rifle one evening and finally asked, "Why do you do it?" Kane didn't look up. "Because they laugh when they kill us." "And that's enough?" His hands paused over the barrel. "Laughter means they think they've already won. I want them to learn silence." More officers died. This time, inside armored vehicles, through reinforced glass, in the middle of dense patrols. One shot each. Always the head. Always from somewhere they couldn't see. Eventually, entire squads began refusing to patrol without drone cover. Some officers refused outdoor movement entirely. Kane watched the effect grow like a virus. Hesitation, paranoia, breakdowns in timing. The resistance began ambushing routes made weak by poor alien coordination. The first captured alien soldier screamed about a shadow eye, a ghost who hunted from miles away. Kane knew Ralther was adapting too. The decoys were smarter now. The drones flew lower and carried anti-optic pulses. Twice, Kane had to change position mid-setup due to sonic bursts disorienting his hearing. But it wasn't a deterrent, it was a challenge. He studied Ralther's patterns. The general was clever, never exposing himself fully, always flanked by shielded armor and surveillance units. Still, there were gaps. Small, rare, but there. One shot. That's all he needed. Then came the incident at the broadcasting tower. The aliens had captured a group of resistance fighters and were preparing a global feed. Ralther himself would oversee the execution, his first public appearance since arriving on Earth. The location was a trap, a false hill nearby with heat signatures, gunshot detectors lining every approach, 2 counter-sniper units scanning a wide perimeter. Kane set up 6 hours early. He crawled through sewer tunnels, drank rainwater off rusted gutters, and climbed into a long-abandoned bell tower overlooking the plaza. He placed a tiny mirror behind him, checking for drone glints. He waited. The plaza filled. Civilians forced to watch. Ralther walked out, helmet off, confident. Kane adjusted his scope. Wind, mild. Distance, 2.1 kilometers. Target, center mass if no helmet. Or better, just under the left eye. Ralther raised his hand. Kane's finger rested lightly on the trigger. He didn't fire. Not yet. He was watching Ralther's second-in-command, the one constantly checking the tower's direction. The decoy. Kane scanned left. And there it was, a shimmer in the air 2 buildings over. Cloaked armor. Sniper team. They were hunting him. He shifted his aim, fired once, and the shimmer fell like a dropped curtain. In the plaza, Ralther's had snapped toward the tower. They'd locked eyes. Kane didn't flinch. Ralther smiled, just slightly, then turned and walked away. The trap had failed. But now, the game had truly begun. Rain slicked the shattered rooftops of New Baltimore as night fell, casting the city in a sheen of silver and shadow. The ruins whispered with the breath of 1,000 broken windows. Somewhere among them, Elias Kane waited, motionless, invisible, and listening. The rifle rested across his lap, like a part of him, warmed by body heat and memory. He wasn't looking through the scope. Not yet. This wasn't a shot. It was a hunt. General Rowther was adapting, and Kane could feel it. The aliens' tactics had shifted from overt brute force to something more insidious. Drone patrols now moved with randomization algorithms, pulsing with heat flares and frequency jammers. Decoys weren't just visual anymore. They mimicked heart rates, breathing, even the minor vibrations of life. Kane had watched one for 2 hours before realizing the soldier never blinked. But the general's most effective tactic wasn't mechanical. It was moral. The bait had become more personal. In Sector 12, an abandoned school was converted into a trap. Civilians were forced into the yard, surrounded by open lines of fire. A high-value alien lieutenant was stationed on a platform behind them, helmet off, intentionally exposed. The message was clear: take the shot, kill the innocent, or walk away and let him command another day. Kane didn't take the shot. He watched through the scope, jaw clenched, breath shallow, as the lieutenant spat onto the concrete and laughed. Then he left the platform untouched. The civilians were marched back inside, shaken but alive. Back at the safe house, Kane sat in silence as Amina reviewed the intercepted data. "They're calling you indecisive," she said, not unkindly. "They're building propaganda out of your hesitation." "They're testing lines," Kane replied, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Trying to see where I draw them. And I already know where they are. That's why I don't cross them." She didn't argue. She knew what Kane carried wasn't just ammunition and tactics. He bore memories with barbed edges. There had been a village once, long before the invasion, when Kane was still just a soldier, not a myth. He'd taken the shot, killed the target, and the explosion that followed had taken everyone else: children, mothers, brothers. That silence afterward was louder than any applause. But the war didn't care about ghosts. Neither did Rowther. 2 days later, the general deployed something new: quadrupedal drones, low-profile and spider-like, built for urban stalking. They moved quietly, skittering over glass and stone, releasing pheromonal tracers that followed carbon sweat. Kane killed the first with a buried blade trap. The second one he dismantled manually, studying its core. It was adaptive, learning heat signatures over time. He radioed Amina once, speaking in low, clipped tones. "They're not searching for me anymore. They're mapping me. They're building your shadow. Let them. They haven't seen the shape of it." The next strike came during a resistance raid on a fusion relay in District 9. A team of human fighters had set charges to cripple alien power routing. Kane provided overwatch from a clock tower a mile out. The raid went clean, too clean. As the team exfiltrated, alien counter-snipers opened fire from 3 directions. The traps had turned. 2 resistance members dropped. A third bled out behind cover. Kane shot once, taking out 1 sniper through a crack in a crumbling statue. He moved positions immediately, slipping into the skeletal rafters of the adjacent building. No time to mourn. No time to grieve. The war didn't pause for funerals. Later, in the candlelit hollow of a burned-out subway, Amina confronted him again. "They're adapting faster than we can keep up. We need something bigger than just picking off lieutenants." Kane's hands were steady as he reloaded. "Rowther is the spine. Cut that, the rest collapses. He doesn't show himself anymore. Only decoys, projections, and traps. He will." She studied him carefully. "And how do you know that?" "Because he wants to beat me. Personally." In the upper chamber of a repurposed command ship, Rowther studied a holographic model of the battlefield. Dots marked confirmed sightings, old sniper nests, trajectories. Lines webbed outward like a living organism. At the center was a pulsing red spark, Elias Kane. Or rather, the probability field of him. "He is deliberate," Rowther said to his analysts. "Predictable in ethics, not in tactics. That is his flaw." A plan began to form, precise, delicate, and wrapped in cruelty. They fed the resistance false data, a supply convoy routed through a vulnerable zone. Kane received the intel and observed for a full day. No movement. Then, at dusk, a single vehicle rolled into view, slow, exposed, unguarded. It was bait, but not for Kane's rifle. for his past. Inside the vehicle, through the glass, sat a woman. Her features weren't familiar, but they were made to be. She had the look of someone from a photograph Kane hadn't carried in years. Brown eyes, a scar above the lip. She was shackled, frightened, mouthing silent words. Kane stared through the scope, paralyzed. The moment stretched. And then he fired, not at the vehicle but at the building behind it. The second round followed an instant later. The structure collapsed in on itself, revealing a hidden sniper team and a comms relay projecting an illusion. The woman was fake. So were the tears. But the shot had purpose. It cut the strings. That night, Kane carved a message into the casing of a .50 round and left it embedded in the ruins for Ralthor's retrieval. It read, "I see your face now." The time for sparring was over. The city lay quiet beneath the shroud of pre-dawn haze, its ruined towers casting jagged silhouettes against a sky bruised by war. Somewhere beyond the haze, in the hollow ribs of what was once a cathedral, Elias Kane adjusted his scope with steady hands. The rifle rested atop a wall scorched black by plasma fire, its barrel pointed at a plaza where no human dared walk and no alien had ever died of natural causes. This was it. Kane had studied Ralthor's patterns for weeks. The general had grown bolder, stepping closer to the edge of exposure, but never quite crossing it. Public appearances were now conducted in open spaces surrounded by mobile shields and cloaking drones, always announced at the last second, always brief. Until now. A communiqué intercepted by the resistance spoke of a final message, a broadcast to be delivered by Ralthor himself, a warning to Earth, and a declaration of irreversible dominance. It would be his crowning gesture, the end of resistance, the final note in a symphony of conquest. But Kane saw something else in the message: arrogance. A blind belief that Earth was already underfoot, that the sniper, the ghost, had lost his trail. He hadn't. From his perch, Kane had a direct line to the stage where Ralthor would stand. Distance: 1,873 meters. Wind: mild, eastward drift. Time: 7 minutes until sunrise. One shot, one opportunity. Below, the plaza buzzed with activity. Alien soldiers in crimson armor moved in squads, sweeping buildings, scanning rooftops. Drone pairs looped the sky, overlapping their coverage. Every alley, every doorway, was a potential threat. But not here. Not this broken tower. It had collapsed during the second week of invasion. The aliens believed no human could survive the radiation within. They didn't know Kane had spent days building immunity to it. As minutes slipped by, a column of transport vehicles arrived, sleek and humming, unloading a dozen high-ranking officers. And then, from the lead walker, Ralthor stepped down. No helmet, no visor. Just a face carved from cold precision and command. Kane recognized him instantly, not from file images, but from movement, from presence. He didn't need digital confirmation. He knew the weight of prey when it entered his scope. Ralthor turned toward the cameras. His voice boomed through the plaza, projected by translation nodes that distorted his speech into a low, guttural rhythm. "Humans," he began, "you have mistaken endurance for victory. You confuse survival with strength. This is not your planet anymore. It is a cautionary tale written in ash." Kane centered the crosshair on his target's left eye, just below the brow. It would pass through the skull, exit cleanly, and strike the polished wall behind him. The broadcast would not cut out immediately. The fall would be seen. The death would be real. He paused. Breath in. 2 beats. Exhale. Trigger squeeze. The shot broke the silence, like the cracking of the world's spine. A single sharp thunder that echoed through the concrete carcasses of the city. Before the sound reached the plaza, Ralthor's head snapped backward, the left side collapsing inward like shattered porcelain. His body fell, heavy and slow, a puppet with its strings slashed. Panic erupted. The broadcast didn't cut. It stuttered, distorted, and then refocused on the crumpled body of a general whose name was meant to last for centuries. Alien officers screamed in native tongues, shields deployed late, Soldiers fired wildly into the shadows. But the ghost had already vanished. Cain left the rifle behind, not out of haste, but as a message. He moved through the sewer lines, slow and methodical, boots splashing in shallow water, his breathing calm. He passed no one. He left no trace. When he reached the surface hours later, the sky had turned gold and red, painted by a sun the aliens could not block. At the resistance outpost, Amina greeted him with a silent nod. No questions. No celebrations. Just a shared moment of understanding as the news fed through cracked screens. General Ralther, confirmed Kia. Command chain in disarray. Ground forces retreating from major urban zones. A younger fighter turned to Cain, voice shaking with awe. They're pulling back. We did it.
Cain didn't respond.
He stared at the screen as images flickered, alien ships lifting off, scrambling for orbit. Cities beginning to breathe again. Human flags rising in ruins. But his expression didn't change. Later that night, he sat alone on a cliffside overlooking the sea, the wind tugging at his jacket, the stars burning cold and distant. The galaxy had witnessed Earth's resistance. The Legion, once untouchable, had been wounded. And wounds left scars. Scars invited questions.
Fear.
Cain lit a match, watched it burn low, then dropped it into the grass. Behind him, someone approached Amina. She sat beside him, saying nothing at first. They're not done, he finally said. No, she agreed. But they're listening now. He nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on the stars. They laughed, he said, voice low, at a man with a scope. She smiled faintly. And then the Crosshair found their heads. Cain said nothing more. He didn't have to.